6:14 a.m. local time, Strait of Hormuz. Aboard an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer transiting international waters, surface radar picked up a small, fast contact peeling off the Iranian coast and heading toward the maritime traffic lane. Small craft weren't unusual in that region. Fishermen, coastal patrol boats, light commercial traffic. What got everyone's attention was the speed. Surface contact, small vessel, speed 38 knots, heading intercepts our bow, the radar operator reported, eyes locked on the display. 38 knots is too fast for a fishing boat. That's fast attack craft speed, the kind Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has run in coordinated swarms across the Persian Gulf for decades. The surface warfare officer moved in on the console, eyes on the projected track. "This isn't routine traffic," he said, mentally running the closest point of approach. The destroyer never sails unprotected, but in tight corridors like Hormuz, maneuvering room is thin, and a small vessel with hostile intent can close the gap in minutes, not hours. On the bridge, the officer of the deck took the alert. CIC reports high-speed surface contact, range 6 nautical miles, closing. The captain didn't hesitate. Mark position, open radio contact, raise readiness on light weapons. The first call went out on the International Maritime Safety Channel. Unidentified vessel. This is a United States Navy warship operating in international waters. Reduce speed and maintain safe distance. Silence. The message repeated. No answer. At 6:17, a second contact appeared on radar, also launching from the coast, also at high speed, but on a slightly different bearing. Second contact confirmed, speed 35 knots, closing from a different angle, the operator reported. Two fast boats approaching from separate directions wasn't an isolated anomaly anymore, it was a pattern. And any sailor who'd studied IRGC swarm tactics knew exactly what that pattern usually meant. The tactical action officer tensed. They're trying to split us on two fronts. That's the classic swarm attack playbook. Multiple small, agile boats, cheap enough to be considered expendable, closing from different angles at the same time, forcing a larger ship to split its attention, split its sensors, split its decision time. One boat can be ignored, two start becoming a geometry problem. It's a doctrine the IRGC Navy has practiced for years, precisely because it works against exactly this kind of asymmetry. A multi-billion-dollar warship built for blue water combat, matched against a handful of stripped-down speedboats worth a fraction of a single missile in the destroyer's magazine. The math isn't about winning a fight outright. It's about forcing an overreaction, a viral video, a diplomatic headline, or a mistake that costs far more than the boats themselves are worth. Every American commander in the Gulf trains against this exact scenario for that reason. The captain ordered defensive posture. Man the 50 cal mounts, activate the electro-optical surveillance systems, controlled fire only. Nobody shoots without a direct order. The crew moved with train speed. Sailors ran to the deck-mounted weapon stations, clipping in safety harnesses, releasing the safeties, but keeping barrels pointed down, well clear of any trigger discipline lapse. At 6:19, the destroyer's long-range cameras caught the first clear image of the nearest boat. A low, fast hull, the kind used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, light weapons visible on deck, a crew of 3 to 4, no flag flying, no response to automated identification. Confirmed, vessel consistent with IRGC fast attack craft, the ship's intelligence officer reported. The captain took the information without changing tone. Hold course and speed, second radio call. Behind him, the navigator double-checked the destroyer's position relative to the internationally recognized shipping lane, confirming on the chart that the ship remained well within lawful transit waters. That detail mattered. In encounters like this,
Geography is evidence. If Tehran later claimed the American warship had provoked the incident by straying into contested waters, the navigation log, time-stamped, GPS verified, cross-referenced against the maritime boundary, would say otherwise before a single word of argument was needed. The transmission went out firmer this time. Iranian vessels, you are conducting a dangerous approach on a United States Navy warship. Alter course immediately. A broken sound came back over the radio. Not clear words, just static followed by a distorted laugh, then silence again. At 6:21, the nearest boat executed a maneuver that erased any doubt about its intentions. It cut sharply across the destroyer's bow at a range of under 200 yards, throwing up a curtain of spray before peeling off at a tight angle. She crossed our bow, the surface warfare officer reported. Closest point of approach, 200 yards. In nautical terms, 200 yards between a 9,000-ton destroyer and a fast boat isn't a safety margin. It's practically an invitation to disaster. One small rudder mistake, one miscalculated wave, and collision becomes inevitable. The captain kept his voice low and steady. Keep recording, hold course, prepare a warning flare. At 6:23, the second boat joined the first, both now circling the destroyer's bow in a pattern that could only be described as hostile, cutting back and forth, closing and pulling away, probing the American crew's reaction limits. They're in an active swarm pattern. That's demonstrated hostility even without a shot fired. American naval protocol for this kind of encounter is clear and at the same time extremely delicate. A small vessel maneuvering recklessly, ignoring warnings, refusing to identify itself, repeatedly crossing the bow of a much larger ship creates a direct collision risk, but hasn't necessarily crossed the line that would justify live fire. The line between a show of force and a real threat has to be judged in seconds, not minutes.
Fire a warning flare, the captain ordered. A signal flare launched from a deck-mounted rack, streaking red across the still dark sky before bursting into bright light over the water. The message was unmistakable. We see you, and this needs to stop now. The boats didn't back off. If anything, the closer one accelerated, closing to under 100 yards off the destroyer's rail. Critical range, the surface warfare officer called out. 100 yards and closing. Inside the command center, the atmosphere tightened in a different way, not the panic of an out-of-control room, but the total focus of a crew that knew exactly where the line was and knew it was being crossed. The captain gave the next order without hesitation. Fire warning shots ahead of the nearest boat, not the hull, ahead of it. The distinction mattered. Warning shots fired into the water, crossing a vessel's path, communicate intent without necessarily causing direct physical harm. It's the last rung on the ladder before an escalation nobody on either side actually wants. The .50 caliber mount on the forward deck opened fire, a short, controlled burst cutting the water just yards ahead of the nearest boat. The sound cracked across the destroyer's hull, sharp and final. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The boat, which had been coming in on a tight approach curve, swerved hard to the left, cutting across its own wake, opening distance for the first time since the encounter began. Track 1, opening distance, the surface warfare officer reported, a note of relief in his voice. But instead of pulling back with the first boat, the second one accelerated the other way, not retreating, but swinging around to close on the destroyer's stern, where the weapons coverage was thinner. Second boat changing angle, closing on the stern, the radar operator warned. The captain turned immediately to the tactical officer. Reposition the weapons team for stern coverage, now. Sailors moved fast across the deck, repositioning the tactical mobile gun mount, covering the angle the second boat was trying to exploit. At 6:26, the second boat abruptly slowed to about 150 yards off the stern, holding position for a few seconds, as if gauging the destroyer's new defensive setup. She's hesitating, the tactical officer said, watching closely. She's calculating whether there's still an opening. There wasn't. The weapon's repositioning, combined with the first boat's evasive break after the warning shots, had closed the gap the second craft had been counting on. For 15 tense seconds, the boat sat nearly motionless, engines still running, its crew visible through long-range cameras. 4 men, one of them clearly on the radio with someone ashore or aboard another nearby vessel. "She's reporting to someone," the intelligence officer noted, watching the crewmen through long-range digital binoculars. This was potentially the most dangerous moment of the entire encounter, not because the immediate threat had grown, but because a decision was being made somewhere outside American view, a decision that could bring more boats or a full withdrawal. The captain held firm. Maintained readiness. Third radio call in Farsi this time. The electronic warfare crew transmitted the warning in Farsi over the Maritime Safety Channel. "You are dangerously approaching an American warship. Any further approach will be treated as hostile. Withdraw now." This time, a response came back. Short, broken English, loaded with rhetorical hostility. "You don't belong in these waters." The American reply came back immediate and blunt. "We are in international waters, operating legally. Your conduct is what's illegal. Withdraw immediately." At 6:29, the first boat, which had pulled back after the warning shot, began closing again, this time on a wider angle, testing whether the destroyer had relaxed its posture. It hadn't. "Track 1 reapproaching, range 400 yards in closing." The captain didn't change the order. "Hold coverage, no fire unless she crosses 200 yards again." The boat held its new course for nearly a full minute, closing slowly, almost as if testing the American crew's patience inch by inch. At 250 yards, it slowed. At 210 yards, it nearly stopped. "She's right at the edge," the tactical officer said, tense. "One more yard and we're back to firing protocol." For 10 seconds that felt much longer, the boat hung suspended at that exact distance, as if its commander were calculating exactly how far he could push without triggering a lethal response. Then, slowly, it swerved away, cutting speed, opening the range back out past 400 yards. "Track 1 opening again," radar reported. At the same time, the second boat, which had still been holding position off the stern, started moving too, not toward the destroyer, but back toward the coast, its heading settling northeast, back into Iranian territorial waters. The captain watched both tracks on the tactical display for a long moment before speaking. "Maintain elevated readiness until both contacts are past 10 nautical miles." There was no room for overconfidence. Fast boats like these could reverse course in seconds, and the U.S. Navy had learned, repeatedly over decades of patrols in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, that relaxing too early was exactly the kind of mistake swarm tactics were designed to exploit. At 6:34, both boats held a steady outbound course, their speeds gradually dropping as they neared the coastline. "Track 1, 7 nautical miles and opening. Track 2, 7.5 nautical miles and opening," the radar operator reported, his tone finally starting to ease. Inside CIC, nobody celebrated openly, but the tension that had gripped the room for the past 20 minutes slowly began giving way to a quiet, guarded relief. The captain gave the final stand-down order. "Maintain elevated watch for another hour, then resume standard patrol." The weapons crew stayed in position for a few more minutes before getting the order to safe and stow their gear, but the overall mood aboard had already shifted, from the sharp tension of an active confrontation to the particular kind of fatigue that follows any moment when the line between control and chaos got that thin. At 6:41, the initial report went up the chain of command. 2 IRGC fast attack craft conducted hostile approach maneuvers against a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Strait of Hormuz, repeatedly crossing the minimum safe distance, ignoring multiple radio warnings in both English and Farsi, forcing the crew to fire warning shots before finally withdrawing into territorial waters. No direct impact, no casualties, no escalation beyond what was necessary. What the boat crews probably didn't know, or maybe knew and chose to ignore, was that the entire encounter had been recorded start to finish. The destroyer's electro-optical cameras had captured every approach, every swerve, every closest point of approach logged digitally down to the yard. The radio transmissions in English and Farsi had been archived with exact timestamps. Every warning shot was documented, every Iranian response cataloged. Encounters like these, brief and casualty-free as they are never isolated. They're part of a broader pattern of limit testing that Iran's Revolutionary Guard regularly runs against American naval presence in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically important and most tense maritime corridors on the planet, through which a huge share of the world's seaborne oil moves. Every approach, every test, every warning shot fired becomes one more data point in a much larger file on how each side behaves under pressure. For the American destroyer, the practical takeaway from the encounter was clear. The protocol had worked exactly as trained. No lives had been lost, no unnecessary escalation had occurred, but no ambiguity had been left behind either. The Iranian boats knew with absolute clarity that they had crossed a line, that the line had been firmly defended, and that next time the response might not stop at warning shots. Out in the Strait of Hormuz, the water settled back into quiet under the rising morning light. The destroyer resumed its standard patrol route as if on autopilot, its gray hull cutting through the swells with the same discipline as always, its surveillance systems continuing to sweep the horizon for the next contact that sooner or later would come from the same direction. And somewhere near the Iranian coast, two fast boats headed back to port, their crews knowing exactly what the U.S. Navy already knew, that on that morning, in the middle of one of the most contested maritime corridors in the world, the line had been tested, and it had held.